we do have an expert here to talk about OmniAds, all thing OmniAds, which is a big initiative that we've been working with the Meta team, the Signal team over the last couple of months. Potentially have already seen some things come out from Elevar on this, but Kevin and his experience, his team, they've been running a lot of experiments with OmniAds the last couple of months. So I'll handle the tracking side, Kevin. You handle the, okay, so what does this mean for my business, my bank account?
Sounds good. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Brad. Yeah, let's get into it.
Tell everyone about yourself and New Engen, what you guys do, and then we'll jump right into OmniAds.
Cool. Yeah. Well, obviously, my name's Kevin Goodwin, as Brad so perfectly nailed. I'm VP of Strategy and Media at an indie agency called New Engen. We're headquartered in Seattle, but we're based across the entire United States. And we're a full funnel agency working across media, strategy, advanced analytics, creative, influencer, affiliate, you name it. Our calling card, which I think you'll hopefully see kind of come through in the conversation today, is really about like accountable growth while doing full funnel and doing performance media, making sure that everything kind of maps back to ROI, true impact to your business. And so every test we run, all the testing that we do within the channels is oriented towards that. So as we get into the Omni results, everything's going to tie back to performance, which I know everybody cares about. And yeah, really excited for the conversation.
So Kevin and I didn't know each other before this podcast. We literally just met as we hopped on to introduce ourselves. But OmniAds was something that, as I mentioned, Elevar and Meta, we've been talking a lot about how to enable it for our customers. And Kevin, you were sharing a lot of here's what we're doing in OmniAds. Here's some examples, case studies and things, actual results that we've been seeing with some of the beta customers. So OmniAds just came out of what I call their beta period. Meta might use a different name, but what they call general availability, where now it's, I think, available for all merchants. So if you have an online and offline presence, so retail stores, there's a new campaign structure. So I was drawn to Kevin's just share on LinkedIn, because if you never know, like I saw it and I was like, okay, he has the answers that we don't have that I know our customers are going to ask us. So it's a little bit of a shortcut to help you educate our customers as they start enabling this within Elevar. So Kevin, I'll tee it up for you. What are OmniAds?
Yeah. So yeah, traditionally with Meta, or really kind of any of these D2C online channels, you have historically only been able to optimize towards online conversions. So what happens on really your .com website only. What OmniAds unlock is the ability to optimize not just to those online conversions, but to offline conversions as well. And really in this case, like point of sale, retail based conversions. Amazon, other stores we'll leave for another day. And I'm sure there's work in progress there. So that's the gist of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and OmniAds to me is and again, the world of Elevar and tracking, it's okay, we're now sending point of sale orders to Meta with a physical store designation instead of the online or web. Again, the nuance of tracking. And then it pretty much goes out of our world. Like, hey, we're sending all online orders, all offline orders to Meta. And then it's okay, great. Now, so what? So I know you ran some experiments over Q1 as Meta rolled this out into beta. Was it February? When did they roll this out into beta?
Yeah, we ran our test in February, so it was probably right around that time. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe let's just help from an advertiser. Let's say they wanted to launch a new campaign. What does it actually look like? So what are they doing differently inside of Meta if they're wanting to create and launch a new Omni ad?
Yeah. So first and foremost, you have to have offline conversion feed set up and piping into the engine, which obviously Elevar does. So you can't do it without that. And that's a key requirement. And then it's actually really quite simple. And what you do is as you're going through the campaign setup process, you can select optimize to web and offline purchases, attach that conversion feed to the campaign, which is just a pre-filled option for you. And that's it. And it kind of just runs itself. So it's a really, really simple setup, the same way you would really any campaign, just a different optimization and a different conversion source.
Did it change did it change your strategy for creative? Because I know the ads are slightly different because you can attach offers to stores, and that can be a way to drive people into the brick and mortar locations. But what was different in your experience with just the creative side of this new campaign type?
Yeah, I guess first and foremost, what works online or for online sales also works for offline sales. So we see your classic DPA ads, your creator ads, you name it. Like those are driving offline effects. So if you change nothing, you will be okay, I guess is the point there.
Okay.
With the retailer we did the testing with, we had already been doing a lot of, kind of store-based ads where either there's a store attached to the campaign or it's even just talking about the store more directly. So that helps. And then the third bucket I would add is kind of merging those two is, can you do creator-based or video-based campaign that kind of shows an in-store experience. And so then you get a kind of mix of both worlds where you're doing something that's platform native video, it's engaging, it's interesting, but it's like happening in a store. It kind of connects the dots for the consumer that like, okay, this isn't just an online brand.
Right. Were there parts of the new features or functionality that you didn't utilize or you have not utilized yet? Okay. Well, results. So what are someone listens to this, or like, hey, I have 20 stores. I'm going to go enable all of my offline POS orders and send them to Meta through Elevar's CAPI integration. What are the results? Like, what should they be looking out for? And maybe share some of the results without naming the brand or brands that you ran these tests with, or some of the results that you saw.
Yeah. So the testing we ran was with a national retailer with, hundreds of locations, and two different retailers, kind of very similar in scale and size. And it's a little hard to talk about because the results are quite literally video game numbers, like hundreds of percentages of increases in revenue, like 307% increase in offline purchases for one, I guess 700%. So there's a little bit of like, is that real? Like, are we actually seeing what we're seeing? And I think that the short answer is like, obviously it's probably not that magnitude, but the lift we saw was really, really substantial and also validated through a lot of our kind of more agnostic or channel agnostic measurement tools like MMM in this case for the clients we ran this with. So huge jump in offline attributed revenue, makes sense. All of a sudden you're giving a new signal for Meta to optimize to. They're going to take credit for that. But to see that flow downstream into kind of real, just like revenue growth for the business was pretty meaningful. And it was pretty instantaneous too and sustained over time. So I think what we see sometimes is one, it can take a long time to take effect. So you're like, okay, what's the learning period here? Really out of the gate, we saw a spike in revenue. And then the second thing is you can see, you get these early spikes and then things kind of just come back down to earth and nothing really changed. And what we saw was really nice lift out of the gate and then plateaus and well above where we were previously. So it was just like immediately impactful, a very noticeable impact, noticeable across measurement solutions, not just attribution within the Meta UI, which we know is generous. So it kind of checks all the boxes for us.
Did the brand have any pushback? Like, hey, we don't believe these numbers, even in your own MMM reporting or just your agnostic reporting. What was that conversation when you're getting ready for that call? Like, hey, we're crushing it. What was the response?
Yeah, totally. There's a little bit of that. And I think that like we even have that mindset of like, okay, there's no way these are as good as Meta's saying they are. And of course there is some truth to that. And so we worked with them and said, okay, well, let's see what the MMM says. Let's see what our advanced measurement says to validate this before we, roll it out more broadly.
What about the actual in-store reporting? So did they see, like, again, the 307%, that was probably across overall, but did they see a noticeable improvement? Were they looking at period over period store performance and validating we're up X percent?
Yeah, they did. And that shows up, the measurement tools they have kind of look at both online and offline. We were not looking at it at a specific store level, but in aggregate, we did see lift in actual point of sale sales.
Interesting. Were there any legitimate holes that you or these brands that were able to like, hey, did you think about this? Was like any blind spots that came up?
Blind spots. Yeah, that's tricky. I mean, I think we were in a good position because in this case, we have this advanced measurement backing where I think if we didn't have that, the blind spot would be you take these numbers at face value, you go all in on it, and maybe it isn't actually as good as you think it is, or you overinvest into it relative to what the true impact is.
Right.
It's generous, as we know Meta can be with view through attribution, with even click through attribution. And so, we were pre-set up for that. Outside of that, I think just having great data, making sure that it's trustworthy, what you're passing back, and that you're maximizing that too. I think there's always opportunity to amplify the quality of the data you're passing back through your conversion feed. And are you leaving money on the table? I guess would be the other blind spot, like by not reporting enough through your offline conversion feed.
What about, did you see an impact, good or bad, online? So was it cannibalizing at all, or was, again, a 307%, was that overall for the campaign for online and offline?
So those numbers were offline. We saw a lift in online too, which is interesting. And I think what we ultimately attributed that to is, and this is a little bit Meta algorithm nerding out, but the signal you give to Meta dictates who they go find and target. And so if you're saying, find me people who convert online, they're only going to go find people or mostly people who convert online. Suddenly we're saying, find me people who convert anywhere. So it opens the audience up. So we just had way cheaper reach. Like our cost to reach 1,000 people dropped in half, if not more, which was a huge surprise. Like that was not expected for us. It makes sense once you kind of think back on it, which then was a tailwind for our D2C and online sales as well. Now we didn't see a 307% lift, but we saw a nice little bump in online as well.
Well, during a period that February, March, April, I mean, that was for 2025. I mean, the tariff scare and the consumer scare was like almost at peak, and you were still seeing this performance.
Yeah. It's surprising. Obviously, there's a lot more to the business.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice to find these unlocks given those headwinds. Like I think it's a year of for a lot of brands of more with less, and so anything that can drive improved efficiencies, like we're going on.
So just to recap the reporting, obviously you have the in-app reporting in Meta's UI, so you have the combined, and you can break that out between online conversions and offline conversions for the campaign. Then you're looking at whatever that is, you're comparing that like a kaleidoscope, which I'll use steal Cam Bush from Hexclad. He shared this at our Elevar Summit a couple of years ago, and it's just that term is like stuck in my head when he uses all these different methodologies for analyzing like attribution instead of just looking at one MTA report or one tool. Anyways, so step one, look at Meta's UI. What do things look like there? Step two, look at your existing MTA, MMM, or just your general reporting, including online, offline. And then step three is, okay, when it comes to money hitting the bank, like, did we actually see a lift? And that's looking at combined, in this particular case, combined in-store performance, which in theory you could go down to a store-by-store level. So that's like, just to recap the reporting, that is basically the process that you took, and all three had positive signals, and the brand was able to validate, like, yes, this is actually a net like win for us. And whether it was 100% or 300%, somewhere in between, but it was just basically a kick-ass new campaign for them to take advantage of.
Yeah. Like these types of results do not come around often.
Yeah.
And I say that genuinely. Like there's lots of new tools and features rolled out across the myriad of platforms we advertise on. And there's very few that you see this type of like immediate change. Everyone should test it. Like I always come back to like, take these as a directional read. Yeah. Like it may not happen for your business. It's strong enough that I think it's pretty likely it will have a positive impact for your business, but you should still go run a structured test and validate it for yourself.
Yeah. So you mentioned one of the nuances or gotchas. You said you will see inflated numbers. So there are a couple that we were talking about before we hit record. Maybe just recap that while we're on the reporting side. So what were the unexpected results or things that you saw as a result of just this campaign going live and some of the retrospection on it?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, the video game numbers reported, again, inflated, but to see that type of jump, I think is, don't be surprised, I guess. I think it'd be easy to probably to look at that and say, we messed up the conversion feed upload, like something's wrong. There's no way we're seeing 200% increase in conversions, but it's very possible. And again, it's going to over attribute, but you can validate that otherwise. You should still like vet that, obviously, because it's possible you did something wrong, but it's probably more a case of, it's just that impactful. The other one, which I spoke to earlier, is this, this reach component, which like we're really focused on increasing reach for our customers. I think it's a key driver of like the term that's used broadly is like this performance plateau or kind of death spiral where you stop reaching new customers and you start capping out on growth, your CACs rise or your incremental ROAS drops. And what this does is it gave us cheaper reach, bigger audiences. So it's like, not only are we getting just better attributed performance, like it's a performance lever for us, and it's accomplishing that goal of like, let's go find bigger audiences. Let's not stagnate our growth. And that is unique because a lot of these performance tools are really set up to like go after a very niche audience. And it's like as deterministic as possible and kind of constrain you in that way. And so for this to do basically the opposite, it's pretty impactful. That may not be universally true. I would suspect, given how this works, that you will see that, but you should look at those metrics, reach and CPM, and see how that changes. The only other one I would add, which a lot of brands don't necessarily do this, and if you don't, I would encourage it, is how do your demographics shift from an investment perspective? Like as you shift to this, all of a sudden are you skewing more towards younger, older, men, women, certain regions of the country? Is that good or bad? Like it may be good, it may be bad. In our case, we saw some shifts actually to slightly younger audience when we did the Omni, but it's worth looking at that because it could look good in the first week, 2 week, 3 weeks, but then all of a sudden you realize 6 months in that you're going after a very different audience than you want to be or is productive for your business. So get into the weeds of kind of all the different dimensions that you can in reporting within Meta, and make sure it's in line with what you'd like to be doing.
What about exclusion lists? What if anything should we as Elevar that we're responsible for some of the tracking, but our brands ultimately making the decision that the demographics, because it's a big part of our world in the last 6 to 12 months. It's just getting more into third party data. I call first party data. It's kind of like a stick figure, like what are they viewing on site and what they buy or what actions that they're taking. And our job is to turn into three-dimensional, so obviously common attributes like predicted LTV, but also looking at things like household income, is it low, medium, high, and some of the psychographics or demographics or things like what makes them tick, what's their mobility movement outside of the web, what stores are they visiting in person. Have you gone that far into this new world of omni targeting of you're starting to look at exclusion lists for the the physical store purchasers as well, and using that to try to inform your campaign strategy or what customers you want Meta to go target?
We have not done any of that, to be honest. We've kind of just done the initial testing here, but I think there is a lot to be done there. Whether that's, you could think about a lookalike strategy that's a bit different than what you might previously have done, where you're more focused on online specifically. Or thinking about geo-based exclusions, like, hey, we don't want to go after people who are not near stores, as an example, or even some of this third-party augmentation you talked about.
Yeah, we're doing a lot more with custom events with some of our customers. So if you Jobby Coffee, for example, they sell their the condensed coffee. They have protein coffee. The big thing for them is they want to how do we go target protein coffee buyers versus just using a purchase event. So we set up a unique custom purchase event for protein coffee purchase and allowed them to, and a few other different things. I won't give away their whole strategy, but just using that to help them go find new customers. It's kind of like the old 5 years ago was using audiences to target. And now we're using custom conversions because it's compatible with Advantage Plus and allows them to do better targeting. I don't know, any just general thoughts on that? Maybe it's a little bit outside the Omni world, but does it have any crossover?
Yeah, no, I actually think it's potentially very relevant. First of all, stand by that strategy. I think it's a great idea and can be very effective. And to your point, conversion event as a targeting mechanism, I think the benefit of Omni is you're opening the aperture a bit. You're saying bigger audiences. And then what you can go do now is, potentially provide a more precise conversion signal to refocus it a little bit more. And so one way, I haven't done this myself, but do you constrain even the offline conversion feed to only, port in certain types of purchases or values of purchases or whatever, if you want to go optimize more towards that? And Meta will do it. I think we know that when we feed the right data, and they'll go find people like that.
All right. Well, let's get to tracking. This should be the shortest part of the segment. There'll be the Elevar way of tracking and the non-Elevar way. Most listeners to this are Elevar customers anyways, so this is why I don't feel bad about talking about just how to do with Elevar. But if you are an Elevar customer and you're on Shopify, you don't really have to do anything. It takes 10 seconds. You just go into your Facebook Meta destination. We have the ability to block channels or send all orders from all channels. POS in the Shopify world is just another channel. So if you look at your sales by channel report in Shopify, you'll see online store, draft orders, POS, and anything else that comes through third-party apps. So just make sure that you are not blocking the POS channel. And then there's in our advanced settings, it's just for the POS channel, you want that to be sent as a physical store, like the type of purchase event. That's what signals it's an offline purchase event. There'll be a link in the show notes on how to configure it. But again, it takes a minute at most. The nuances here, where there's a couple customers that we are working with that want to get into store specific reporting. So sending a store ID. So those that have Shopify markets or they have multi-store setup. So it'd be actually Shopify markets and also individual store locations. That's where right now it's probably a little bit of we'll send data, it can send custom object data with a CAPI hit and see how that reporting plays out inside of Meta, or if you are pulling that data out from Meta into another platform. But those are the nuances right now that I think are a little bit of just send it and see how reporting falls out. But Shopify markets, store IDs, reporting this offline lift per store is something that we are working with a few merchants on. And I'm sure as more enable this feature, it likely will become more critical as people start looking through with a fine-tooth comb on incrementality and lift studies and things of that nature. I don't think in this example, I don't think you were going down to that level of granular store, like the individual store location, passing a store ID with the offline conversion upload, correct? Offline purchase conversion upload, correct?
That's right. But I think a great next iteration of this.
Yeah. And if you are not an Elevar customer, I don't the brand or the couple of brands you worked with, Kevin, I'm assuming they were not, but what that process look like to get their tracking? Is it a manual import process? We're using another tool? Was it a complicated process?
No, they work with a separate data provider, and I think it's an automated import for them into
Okay.
Meta direct integration. But yeah, I think there's lots of we've done lots of SFTP Excel file drop offs where you're daily downloading it and uploading. So like you can hack your way there. It's going to be a lot harder. It's going to be detrimental to the way Meta optimizes. So I think some of these more plug and play solutions are just better suited for the always on strategy
Because of the delay. That's a big thing with the batch, like the batch and blast.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's another non-Shopify retailer we're working with. I have 140-ish stores, and same thing. They have a technical team. They can route their orders through our API, and then it just gets enriched and passed through the CAPI integration. I don't know if Segment and some of these other solutions, I don't know if they have the ability to do the same thing. I'm sure the segments can, but yeah, you probably don't want to do the manual batch and upload because some of them will move on to another job and forget it wasn't in an SOP or a playbook somewhere that they were supposed to handle that and pass it on to the new employee.
That's right. And then a month later, you're like, why are our numbers so bad? And suddenly you realize there's no data feed piping in.
Yeah. All right. Did we miss anything that you wanted to, or you thought that would be helpful for the listeners on this new campaign from Meta?
I think the only other things I would add and more just kind of tips would be on, once, let's say you set this up, you get going, you're seeing good results. I think, Brad, you talked about some of the ways you can like iterate and advance it further is like, what do you do with your conversion signal, your feed on kind of the practitioner side? Although I think this is overlap as well, is like, we do a lot of conversion signal weighting as it relates to online and offline. So in this case, like most businesses who have offline presence, it's bigger than their online presence. And so if suddenly you're weighting that sale so heavily, what does that do over the long run? And so testing with that, saying, okay, normally it's about 70-30. What if we did down weighted offline, weighted online a little bit to balance it out a bit more? So that'd be one way to test. I think you'd have to work through the feed to do that effectively and kind of come up with some custom conversion events and custom values there. And then the second would be, like always test this through an incrementality lens because of those video game numbers. It's going to be exciting to report that up and say, hey, our Meta's killing it. Our marketing dollars are doing great, but just like make sure you're validating it. You can do an out of the box Meta lift study, cheaper, easier. There's obviously cons associated with that, or you can, work with a third party or do something more sophisticated like GeoLift.
Yeah. What if someone's never done a GeoLift study? What should they expect in terms of effort, time to get that stood up? And would that be something they do before they enable this the new OmniAds campaign, during, after, something different?
Yeah, I think I guess there's a few ways to do it. Like I'm not a data scientist, and so I will probably get slapped on the wrist for some of this. But like I'm a big believer in like there's some intuitive directionality to these things that you can trust. Like it's not like you're just being blatantly lied to, especially when your lift is like 300% or whatever we saw in these cases. And if you can see it in your top line or in other areas, like trust that. So you could go set it up just to like see what happens, make sure it's worth it, and then go run your test. If you're a big advertiser with big budgets, this is a big bet for you, I would set it up as a test out of the gate. GeoLift with stores gets even trickier because you're thinking about store placement and where these things land and how big stores are and all that. But I don't see it changing, like a timeline too much. Like, I'll call it a couple weeks to pull the data at a geo level, do a randomized control, and kind of think through what those match markets should be. And obviously, you probably want to work with or get some sort of understanding of the statistical elements of that and not just like pick things at random. But yeah, it shouldn't add too much time to the setup. And then it's very easy to execute within the platform. Just kind of pick your geos, target that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom here. Where can folks learn more? I'll have a link to your LinkedIn. I'll probably add the link to your specific OmniAds example or a couple of those examples you shared recently. Yeah, where can folks connect with you and New Engen?
Cool. Yeah, I appreciate it, Brad. It's great to be here. And obviously, you guys are building something cool. That's a really easy unlock to go grab a lot of value. Yeah, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I try to post there a lot. I try to make it really tactical and interesting. And that's just, you can look up my name and hopefully you'll see that the right person. I have a mustache in my avatar, at least at current.
Yeah. And
depending on when you listen to this.
He does have a real mustache too. It's a good,
That's
it's a nice
right.
looking
That's right.
mustache.
It is real. And then, yeah, separately on the New Engine side, just newengen.com. Engine is not spelled how it sounds. NEWENGEN.com. And you can always hit me up on LinkedIn if you have other questions.
Is the mustache part of an alter ego?
It's become my core ego at this point.
Yeah.
It was a COVID accident of sorts, early days messing around with the facial hair, and 5 years later, here we are.
Nice. Awesome. Well, Kevin, thanks again. And yeah, go connect with Kevin and check out New Engine. And if you're an Elevar customer and you have questions on OmniAds setup and how we can enable that, just let us know. We're here to help. That's it for this episode.